Welcome back to TalkNorth.com. Thank you for listening. If you can, please download before you listen. It helps our business. I'd also like to thank our producer, Brandon Morton, and let you know if you'd like to sponsor this program or any of the programs on the network, you can reach me at jsouhan47@gmail.com.
We have pressing issues to get to tonight. We could not make it to Tin Shed for our regularly scheduled live show. The weather was just too bad. We didn't want anybody driving in that stuff on our account. We will make up the shows tentatively January 7th, 15th, and 21st. But please follow us on Twitter individually or follow Talk North Pod to confirm those dates. Confirm before you go. Email me, direct message one of us, anything. Just make sure you confirm the dates before we go. That's our tentative plan. We appreciate your patience with that. Hey, thank you to all our sponsors, including Tin Shed, Twirling the Dining Galleria, Grey Duck Vodka, Fixology Repair, and State Farm agent Tony Hoagland. Thanks to our producer, Brandon Morton. And please follow us at Talk North Pod on Twitter and subscribe at your favorite podcast app. Let's get to a lot of wild news, notes, and conjecture. But first, Michael, you've broken my heart. All these years, I've considered you a coffee connoisseur. You know, you're the person who would always tell us about the newest technologies and the newest drinks at the local large box coffee retailer. And here we are getting ready to do our show tonight on a cold, snowy night. And you're microwaving old coffee. What is wrong with you?
Well, first of all, you don't want to waste old coffee. And it was sitting in my coffee pot from this morning, and I decided it was time to cook it up. And luckily, you had so many technical problems getting ready for this. I've already consumed 2 cups since. Yeah.
Yeah. And a technical problem? Those things have never been put in the same section.
So, I don't normally like to microwave coffee, but felt like tonight was the night I had to do it. Got the fireplace going. I was looking forward to driving actually down to Tin Shed tonight. I love going to those shows, but unfortunately, as you mentioned, it's just even though the roads are actually pretty decent with the snow coming and the plows out, and it just didn't make sense to make people drive in it.
So you're really not so much a coffee snob as you are just a coffee addict. You just need your fix.
No, there's no doubt. I'm a coffee addict. I don't, as I've said many times, I don't discriminate on coffee. Gas station coffee, I even like. I've been known for those 6 a.m. flights to make, what's it called? What's it called when it's just like sitting in instant coffee, things like that. So, anything to get my heart going for the day.
Oh, my worldview is shattered, but I'll try to soldier on here. Let's get to some stuff here. I have not, honestly, between a little mini vacation and a lot of NFL and football coverage, I just have not been around the wild much lately. What's the headline? What should I know about this team right now?
A little bit up and down lately. They've had so many exciting wins that you do forget that they've actually, there was a spurt there where they lost 3 of 4. They're only 6-5-1 since Miko went out. So, that's pretty it's pretty average. And so they're not the same team that had, a 10-game unbeaten streak earlier. And so it's now just a matter of trying to rediscover some consistency in the game. I guess when you consider that the injuries that they've had here in the stretch, with Miko missing the last 11 games and Spurgeon missing a chunk of games in there, and Ericsonek missing 3 games, 3 or 4 games. And then obviously Zucker out with a broken leg right now. I think that we didn't expect them to continue soldiering on the way they were. And that really was the biggest shame of the injuries, is that, as it often happens with this franchise, it's just like right when they're playing really well, they get ravaged by injuries. And so they suffered some significant ones. They've done a pretty quality job staying, afloat here, but they've mostly treading water, and they're coming off a pretty disappointing homestand opening loss to the New York Islanders. So, New Year's Eve now, it's a matter of getting back on track against a highly potent Toronto Maple Leafs team that is 12-4-1 since they made the coaching change and fired Mike Babcock. They've scored a ton of goals lately. They had a wild 8-6 win against Carolina the other day. Next game, they scored 6 or 7 goals as well. So they can light you up. I mean, a guy like Austin Matthews is playing 5 more minutes a game. Mitch Marner is absolutely on fire right now. Toronto's a potent team. And so tomorrow, or on New Year's Eve here, they're going to get Eriksson Ek back with the Geek Squad line, playing with Cunnin and Greenway. Koivu will be back with Parisi and Fiala. Donato will get an elevated good chance with Zuccarello and Stahl, and we'll see if the Wild can continue to play well here and get back on track.
Overall, this has been a pretty good team, all things considered, since late November. But it is pretty
really early November, actually. I mean,
they had some pretty good stretches early November as well.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting, Michael, the point I'm trying to make is that their last 3 home games after returning from road trips have all been losses. And it just reminds me, so many times baseball players are telling me the toughest game was you get back from a road trip, you kind of get yourself fired up for the road trip, you get home, you deal with all real world problems and family things, and that first game at home can be problematic.
Yeah, and they've had, it's weird travel too. You don't get a couple days between games. I mean, a couple weeks ago or a week and a half ago, they come back from Arizona. They spend the night there. They get back at 3 or 4 o'clock, and they have an afternoon game the next night without a practice. Same thing the other day. I mean, they had 3 days off, but they had no practice between Denver and the home game because of the ice storm. A lot of guys didn't make it to practice 2 days ago. So in a lot of ways, again, an early game against the Islanders, so no morning skate, and you almost expect them to come out flat. And they certainly did that against a team that was desperate and played physical and a heavy, tight checking type style of game. And a lot of guys struggled in that game because of it. I mean, the top line of Zuccarello and Parisi and Stahl were not very good the other night. And that's a huge reason why they're not going to play together against the Maple Leafs. But you're right. It does seem to, it's an old cliche, first game after a long road trip, but it definitely seems to be something to it because it's not just the Wild. All teams and all sports always seem to have issues in that first home game back after a road trip.
Let's talk about the all-star selections. First, I do want to thank Twill and the Edina Galleria. Twill doesn't have many sales. This week, they do have one.
I wanted to let you know that at Twill, our longtime sponsor, that's twillmn.com, Twill and the Edina Galleria, that you can save an extra 25% off already reduced prices on select seasonal items on New Year's Day. So go into Twill in the Edina Galleria on New Year's Day. You'll get an extra 25% off, already reduced prices. Twill usually doesn't have many sales because they sell their stuff, high-quality stuff. This is a rare opportunity to get in there and get a lot of clothes that I've been able to buy at a reduced price. Check it out.
Thanks to Scott Dayton and his staff at Twill. So Stahl in, Parisi out. Is that the right call?
Well, I mean, the last week and a half, Eric Stahl's been absolutely on fire. 7 goals in his last 9 games. I think him reaching the 1,000-point club, 89th player in NHL history to do so, only the 6th active player in NHL history to do so, or excuse me, the 6th active player in the NHL right now to do so. I think that's the real reason why the league looks at it. And the way it works when you're not voted in by the fans is that the hockey operations department has a real limited amount of roster spots for each team. If you look at each division, the Wild, they have 7 teams in their division. There are some teams that have 8 teams in their division. And you still get the same 6 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 2D. And so that makes it very, very difficult, especially when the host team is going to get a handful of guys. And the host team this year happens to be in the Central Division. So obviously it wasn't going to be Dubnyk this year because he missed the last month, and he has really struggled the first at least month and a half of this season, you could say. Defense, if anybody, it was going to probably be Ryan Suter. In fact, he's on the last man standing ballot, which is a thing where fans can vote in the last player on the team. So that he was going to have an opportunity. And then up front, it was going to be Stahl versus Parisi most likely, even though it'd be really exciting to see a guy like Fiala or somebody in there, in a 3-on-3 format, especially and skating up and down the ice like we've seen lately in Wild overtimes, how good he is. But it was going to be Parisi versus Stahl, and Parisi, up until the other day, had led the team in goal scoring. I think it would have been a really neat choice to have him be the guy, just because he's never represented the Wild. Suddenly, he has 3 children, so he would have gotten a chance to bring his family there for the first time. But you can never argue with Eric Stahl. He's been their best player lately. He leads them in scoring. He leads them in goal scoring. As I mentioned, he's the most decorated player on the team. Once captained a team called Team Stahl. Once was the All-Star Game MVP. So he'll get to go for the 6th time. His kids are 10, 8, and 5. They'll get to enjoy it. And so anytime Eric Stahl gets any sort of accolade, you're happy for him because he's such a class act. But I felt bad for Parisi today. I talked to him in the locker room. You can tell that he was, disappointed in it. He's not, depressed or anything like that. But he admitted that, like, look, if anything, he would have really just liked to have brought his family. But instead he'll get a week and a half off because the All-Star weekend coincides with the bye week as well.
And where is his game right now? As you said, he's been playing really well. Is he playing at kind of mid-career level, like at prime level, or is he kind of giving you just enough to be a good player?
Zach or Eric?
Zach.
Zach, look, up until the Chicago game when Patrick came at a hat trick, Zach was the hottest goal scorer in the NHL for a month. He's played well for the most part. Last night, a lot of guys struggled, but that Stahl, Zuccarello, Parisi line did not have a good night. They didn't get a ton of shifts. I mean, it's crazy. If you look in the second period, I think Zach played 18 minutes of the game, but he only played 4 shifts in the second, none in the last 5 minutes. And then the third, I think he had 6 or 7 shifts. But that was emblematic, I think, that Bruce looked at a line that just wasn't going well. Zuccarello had one of his worst games of the season. He was tossing the puck away a lot. And Stahl and Parisi weren't that much better. And so it just was a tough night for that line. So now it'll allow him to get back with Koivu and Fiala. And when Zach was playing at his best, it was with Koivu and Fiala this season. So we'll see if he can get back to that. But for the most part, he's done a really quality job, like a lot of the guys on this team. I mean, really when that calendar struck November 1st, everybody from Zuccarello to Stahl to Fiala to Donato to Parisi to even Ryan Suter and Jared Spurgeon. Remember, Jared had a real tough first part of the month as well, first month of the season. It just feels like everybody started to play better on this team. And for the most part, it's continued. I mean, it's crazy to think this isn't just a week or two. The Wild have been the hottest goal-scoring team in the NHL since November 5th. I mean, that's just crazy. They're 5th or 6th right now in even strength goals for. If they could just shore up defensively, if they can get better goaltending, if they can improve on their special teams, their penalty kill has been a little better lately. Their power play is still pretty bad. If they can, or at least not productive, not scoring on an every night basis. I thought they looked pretty good yesterday. Had the ability to get chances, not a lot of shots on goal. If they can get that stuff going, I think everybody's going to start playing better. And Zach's one of those guys that has turned the season around.
We're going to do a bunch of Twitter questions tonight. Also want to ask you more specifically about the power play. Let's thank our newest sponsor, though, Grey Duck Vodka. That's Chad Greenway's company. Minnesota proud, Minnesota born vodka.
When we asked you to get the duck out, wow, did you respond? Grey Duck Vodka is now in over 1,500 locations and expanding every day. This is Chad Greenway, and I just want to say thank you for making Grey Duck Minnesota's vodka. With the wonderful ingredients from Minnesota farmers, Grey Duck is gluten-free and has won 3 gold medals for taste. For all upcoming events and a list of locations carrying Grey Duck, head to greyduckspirits.com.
Please drink responsibly. Grey Duck Spirits, LLC, Lakeville, Minnesota.
Get the duck out.
Are you seeing anything that would help the power play in terms of manpower, who's used, who isn't?
Well, look, I think getting Koivu back actually will help. I know that some fans they're listening in their car probably crashed, but the one issue with the units right now is that they've been mixed up since Mikko's been out. Now a lot of it's Zucker's been out as well. But it's just been a mishmash of players, guys that normally aren't accustomed to playing the power play, getting on it. There might have to come a point where Bruce thinks about changing the personnel even on the back end and even getting a Susie out there. I think he's trying to make sure that he doesn't give him too much leeway right now because he's doing such a quality job at 5-on-5 and the penalty kill. But, so far we just haven't seen a lot of great play from, like, say, the Eriksson Fiala or guys like Cunnin and Greenway when they've been on it and people like that. So The other night, last night, the first power play of the game, 2 minutes in the zone was the Stahl, Zuccarello, and Parisi line with Hunt and Dumba, I believe it was. And again, 2 minutes in the zone, they zipped it around. Zuccarello said that after the game. And they just unfortunately weren't able to get shots on goal. They had their opportunity to shoot pucks. They didn't. Even when they did shoot pucks, they missed the net. One shot on 3 power plays just isn't going to do it in the National League. They scored a big goal in Denver. They scored a big goal in Chicago, but for the most part, there's a reason why they're 3 for 33 the last little bit here.
Absolutely. Hey, reminder, tinshedmn.com is the website for Tin Shed in Savage. It's where we do our live shows. It's where we hope to do a bunch of live shows this month to catch up with them. Please come out to the shows. It's a blast. Great people, great food, great atmosphere, games for kids to play, pinball, big screen TVs everywhere. If you go to tinshedmn.com, you can look out for their buy one, get one free deals, their happy hour deals, and their coupons and the new menu items. tinshedmn.com. Let's go to some Twitter questions unless there's something else you wanted to get to right now.
No, let's go for it.
All right, Will Tomlinson, does the performance of Sturm make it less likely that Koivu stays after this season?
I think it's more so, I don't know. It's a tough. It's funny. We were talking about it in the press elevator today, too. It's like, if you're going to re-sign him, you're going to give him a 1-year deal. Do you do it? I mean, do you do it just to, because you feel like you still don't have that guy? Look, the reality is that they had points in 8 straight games before Mikko was out, and he was playing his best hockey of the year on a second-line role. And other guys have gotten looks there, and they haven't been as good. Eriksson Ek has such a perfect role right now on this team between Greenway and Cunnin that would be a great line coming into next year. So if you look at it that way, who is your second-line center? And unless you can go and acquire one, it might have to be Mikko. Because I don't think Nico Sturm is going to be in that area where you can put him on that line. Who knows if Victor Rask is here? I will say that fourth line has been outstanding lately, and Victor's a big reason for it. And I thought last night Victor was one of their best players. He skated well. He created chances. He's just, it's funny. I remember at the beginning of this season when we had some of these podcasts, on one of the podcasts, I said, who knows? There's a chance that Victor Rask could be a handy player for this team. And it took him a while, and he had to be patient, but it's got to be really gratifying for him right now to be playing as well as he does and be at a point where, maybe a month ago, Bruce Boudreau would have said, you know what, let's sit Victor and keep Nico here. And here there was not one part of Bruce that said, all right, I want to pull Victor out against the Maple Leafs or in this upcoming homestand. And so Sturm gets to go back to Iowa and continue to really improve his game. So, it's hard to say because they're different roles. And I don't disagree that Nico looks like he's got a chance to be an NHL player. But Nico and Eriksson Ek are similar players from the role standpoint. And they have such a great shutdown line right now with Eriksson Ek and Cunnin and Greenway that would be a really cool line to have next year. So then you just got to wonder who is that second line center. So, I still am on the belief that they're either re-sign him for a year or Nico retires. I just don't see him being willing to move to another team as of now at the trade deadline or beyond. So we'll have to see, but I still think that it's more likely than not that Nico would be the guy that they would want in that role over Eriksson Ek or Nico next year.
Interesting.
But the question by Will, but the question by Will is a good one, because the one thing that Nico showed during this 5-game stretch, with the exception of last night where, everybody against the Islanders really wasn't really playing well. I mean, there were some, really bad performances last night. A couple real tough plays. I mean, I watched it again this afternoon. That Too Many Men on the Ice by Ryan Hartman. I just don't understand what could have happened on the bench that made him go onto the ice. It was one of the craziest Too Many Men's I've ever seen. There were 3 forwards battling in the defensive zone, and all of a sudden, the defensive zone or offensive zone, regardless. All of a sudden, defensive. All of a sudden, Ryan came out of nowhere and skated in the zone. They played with, for like 6 or 7 seconds with too many men. But it just, with the exception of last night, Nico's been getting better every game. He's so physically, he's just a gym rat. It's funny. I'm doing this poll for The Athletic, and there's league questions and there's team specific questions, and this will all run, around the bye week time, but there are players starting. One of the questions I have is who's in the gym the most, and a lot of players now are putting Nico because he's just in impeccable shape. Like he is, you could tell a professional, and I think he's going to have himself a really long career if he could really find himself a role. I just don't think that a skilled role in a top 6 role right now, at least, is something that's in the cards for him.
Interesting. From Kyle Bonstrom, who does Zucker get traded to Florida for Borgstrom?
I mean, you're just throwing a name against the wall. It's hard for me to say where he's going to. I don't know what's on his no trade list or not. But the premise of the question is that we all think at some point a top 6 winger or even a top 9 winger. Whether it's your wingers are Parisi and Zuccarello. I don't think they're going anywhere. So that by process of elimination now that leaves Fiala and Zucker. I don't think at this point they would ever think of trading Fiala the way that he's playing, and then Greenway and Cunnin. And I don't think you want to give up on 2 young guys like that. We'll see. So that leaves, you're going to have to open up something for Kaprizov. You remember Kaprizov is a right wing too, so that goes Zuccarello, Fiala, and Cunnin. So if you're going to bring Kaprizov over and you trade it to Zucker, you have to really know in your heart of hearts that Zuccarello or Fiala can go to the left side, and both Zuccarello and Fiala, even though they're left shot guys, have always played their offside. So it'll be interesting what Billy Guerin does here in the next little bit. But as I've said all along, I mean, how funny would it be? Probably not for Jason, but funny from an irony standpoint that for an entire year, Paul Fenton was trying to move Jason Zucker to no avail. From teams like Calgary to obviously Pittsburgh to Arizona, and wasn't able to get it done. And then all of a sudden, Billy Guerin comes in and winds up trading Zucker. It'd just be kind of really, really ironic.
Yes, that would be strange. Hey, thank you to John Hedges and Fixology Repair, fixologyrepair.com. In the Skyway in St. Paul, in the Skyway in Minneapolis, 3rd floor of the Mall of America, right by Nordstrom's. That's the big mothership, and that's where you go buy the watches as well as having all your stuff repaired.
Hi, this is John with Fixology Repair. For the better part of a decade, we've been privileged to serve you for all of your jewelry, watch, and smartphone repair needs at the Mall of America. Since Minnesotans largely hate going to the mall, we expanded 2 years ago to reach you in the Minneapolis Skyway. And now this year, we're pleased to announce we have a new location at Wells Fargo Place in the St. Paul Skyway. All 3 shops are equipped to help with your watch and cell phone repair needs on site, while all jewelry, computer, and game consoles will be completed at the Mall of America store. Please bring us your repair challenges, and don't forget to mention the Talk North podcast for a 10% discount on all of our services.
All right, back to Twitter questions from Trevor. Announcement for the 2021 Winter Classic will be Wednesday, ?
It's coming. The announcement is definitely coming.
And do you have any clue?
Trevor's probably right. It's coming Wednesday, I would think.
You don't have a prediction as to who's going to get it?
No, I mean, I've said all along, I maintain that I think that Minnesota is getting the Winter Classic. I'm pretty confident that that's going to be the case. I've said all along that I think it's going to be Target Field. So yeah, I do think an announcement's coming. And as of a while ago, all the boxes were being checked from a Minnesota standpoint. And, if they get it, I give a lot of credit to Matt Naka and Craig Leopold and Mitch Halgerson with the Minnesota Wild and Dave St. Peter with the Minnesota Twins. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I know that people hate to give credit to people, but the Pohlad family too, because let me just promise you, if the Wild get the Winter Classic, it's going to be a significant expense to the Pohlad family because they are going to have to winterize that ballpark. And there's a lot of things that would have to be done to do that as well. And then obviously meet Minneapolis. I mean, the whole Sports Minneapolis Commission, which is an arm and Meet Minneapolis, have done a lot of legwork here. So we'll see if it's going. Gary Bettman's going to make that announcement at some point here in the next little bit. And I really do think that Wild fans are going to be excited.
And Roy Smalley and I talk about this a lot on the baseball podcast. If you want to rip the Pohlads for not spending more on payroll, you certainly can do that. But they put a lot of their own money into Target Field, upgrading it, keeping it state of the art. I've been to all the ballparks, as good as any of them. And they love having this kind of stuff too. I mean, they've had cool football games there. They've had all kinds of great high school events there. So I would be excited about a Winter Classic at Target Field. I think it would be a blast.
Yeah, I agree with you.
From Davis Bailey, he actually wanted to talk about Sturm. You've already been through that. Here we go. Russo-Slacks, your favorites. No groan?
Okay.
Yeah. We all know how you like to retell stories, so I think it's time to hear the grade school throwing rocks one again, Michael.
Oh, my God. I did tell that story once, didn't I? Yeah, I was at
he has no hops.
I was at Camp Kenwall on Long Island. It was a day camp. The day camp owned by something Rosenberg or Rosen something. He used to be a pitcher for the Chicago White Sox. And it was actually cool, his baseball background, because we used to get a bunch of like New York Mets that would come to camp and, do like, play ball with us and things like that. So we had like Lenny Dykstra and Mookie Wilson and John Stearns and Rusty Staub and all those old Mets. I was once sitting on the racquetball court, and I was throwing rocks against this big cement racquetball court wall, and one of the counselors walked by and saw me, and I then dropped my rocks and pretended that I was practicing my swim strokes.
I don't remember the story. I thought you had told all the stories, and maybe I was just asleep for that.
You know what? I probably haven't told this story, but as I've always said, freaking Russo-Slack somehow is like lives in my head, so he probably just knows it. I don't know how he knows. I honestly don't know how he knows all this stuff, but it is sometimes so eerie. Some of the things that he tweets and says, and just drives me crazy.
Well, we do have lawyers from TSR Injury Law who sponsor the Krasinski show. We can talk to them about a restraining order. I think we can swing that.
It's so funny. So sometimes I do commission Russo-Slacks to help me out a little bit. And so like we had this thing the other day called the Athletic Cup. It was like if we were going to do like a World Cup right now in hockey, like all our writers, some of our writers at the Athletic put together what that would look like, and we called it the Athletic Cup. And I honestly, the way it was presented, I honestly don't know if anybody that put this out there thought to themselves like that there's a double entendre to what the Athletic Cup is. Okay, yeah. and then it was like a light bulb went off on our inter like office like chat program that we have, and like people started talking about it, and I think it was because of some of the Twitter reaction to the name of it. So so they were joking on our thing that we needed some sort of like logo or trophy or whatever of what the Athletic Cup was. So I direct messaged Russo-Slacks and I said, hey, put your photoshopping skills together, take the Athletic logo, take a jock strap, and create something for me, and so I could throw it in our private channel. And by the end of that day, he did it, and I threw it in there, and it was a hit. People absolutely loved it. So I told Russo-Slacks that on direct message, and he wrote back. He goes, just a word to the wise. He goes, don't ever Google the words jockstrap because there's a lot of weird things. So yeah.
I knew if this started off with a story about your interaction with Russo-Slacks, eventually I would be disgusted, and I was.
Yeah.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. So
from Jason Hager, any fallout from Tortorella's rant?
Not that I saw it today. I have been so busy today. I can't even explain. I'm working on a huge story in a couple days. I just went out to dinner, or actually not dinner, a couple drinks with Alex Stalock for an ongoing series of interviews I've been doing to do a huge feature on him in the next little bit that I think a lot of just sports fans, hockey fans in general, will absolutely love. But so I just went and met up with him, and then the Stahl story that I wrote today, and then not a lot of sleep. Spent the night lashing out at some moron on our comment section of the Athletic. So just have not gotten a look at this Tortorella thing. I will say this. Okay, so are you aware of the Tortorella story, Jim?
I saw the rant.
So basically, he has this rant against the league, and I am one of those people. I really like John Tortorella. Okay, now to be fair, my dealings with him have always been unbelievable. He treats me really well. I don't have a great relationship with him. I haven't dealt with him a ton, but it's just always been as a visiting writer. But I feel like I knew him before he was John Tortorella. And what I mean by that is that when he was a young coach with the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Panthers at the time had Mike Keenan, it was such a relief for us beat writers to go and sit in John Tortorella's office and actually before a Lightning game and listen to him talk X's and O's and things like that. And it was before he had the whole Larry Brooks interactions in New York and dealt with the New York media and the Vancouver media where he just would lose his temper a lot. And so I never witnessed that, and he always treated us great. So I love the guy. But on this one yesterday, so it's a weird story. So in overtime, apparently, according to the Athletics' Aaron Portzline, who did a great job painting the picture because I didn't understand the context of the rant, but there was say 19 seconds left in overtime, or 17 point, I forget what the times were, but 1.2 seconds went off the clock in Columbus that shouldn't have in overtime. And they had told the referee, Dan O'Halloran, a veteran referee, to this. Normally the referee would then go over the timekeeper, say, hey, did this happen? Can you put the time back on? Apparently Dan O'Halloran refused to do that. And Chris Schlenker, a young referee who actually made one of his first NHL refs games in this building here in XL. He actually did the Zach Parise rehab game in Iowa. I just know that because I ran into him. I met him in the lobby of the Des Moines Residence Inn. That's an aside, I guess. So apparently they refused. Apparently they refused to put the time back on. Well, then what happens is somebody, I can't remember, one of the defensemen scores a goal 0.2 seconds after the overtime buzzer sounds to go into a shootout. And then they go into a shootout, and unfortunately their goalie gets hurt. And so he has this rant that goes again, that trashes the referees and the league for not putting the time on the clock, and said not only did it cost us the victory, but it cost us the goalie, right? And I see what he's saying, because that goal would have counted technically if you added the 1.2 back. But I mean, you know what the butterfly effect is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you know that whole thing. My point is that say they spend another 2 minutes putting the time back on the clock, everything in the world changes, right? I mean, the where the linesman drops the puck, who maybe he kicks somebody out, like real time would have changed by them just not doing it in the process that they did it in. So I guess I'm watching this and I'm thinking to myself, well, it's just like if you took a left turn instead of a right, you might get hit by a bus. Well, just if they added that 1.2 seconds clock on the thing back, everything in the next real time changes. So in other words, not necessarily does that goal happen anyway. So it doesn't mean that they would have won the game, and then because they won the game means that there wouldn't have been a shootout that would have gotten the goalie hurt, I guess is the way I'm saying it. So I'm sort of thinking that and I'm reading all the comments and everybody's like, yeah, Torts is right. They cost us the game and the goalie. And I'm just thinking to myself, well, just because they added the 1.2 seconds left doesn't mean you would have still scored that goal. So I guess that's what I'm saying. I know that was a convoluted way. I'm not very intelligent as a human being to begin with, so it wasn't probably the most eloquent way of saying it. But I think people are catching my grift. But yes, I don't think John Tortorella was thinking about the butterfly effect when he went into the rant. It is called the butterfly effect, right?
Yes.
And the only reason why I know it's the butterfly effect because I couldn't think of what the phenomenon was. And I was saying all this in the press room today at Trier Rink. And Dame Izatani pipes up and he's like, the butterfly effect. I'm like, the butterfly effect. So anyway.
Yeah, the butterfly effect, if somebody doesn't know what we're talking about, it's the scientific philosophical notion that if a butterfly flaps its wings on the other side of the globe, that could cause a chain of effects that lead all the way to the other side of the earth. So, in other words, it's very metaphysical, but whatever. You get the idea. Yeah. Hey, let's thank State Farm agent Tony Hoagland, because he's putting up with us talking about the butterfly effect when he wants us to be hearing more about Minnesota Wild. HOAGLUND.
Every team knows that the 2-point play can be a winning move. That's why State Farm agent Tony Hoagland and his team are here to help you go for two by combining your home and auto insurance. It's a great call that saves you time and money. So go for the win and score savings by combining your home and auto. It's just another way we're here to help life go right. Call State Farm agent Tony Hoagland at 763-421-4900 or online at champlaininsurance.com.
I definitely think that we have the title of this show.
Yes.
Russo tries to explain the butterfly effect
while microwaving coffee in Des Moines
Yeah.
residents in.
Yeah.
Family.
By the way, I've hit that point with my microwave coffee where I'm now pacing around my house. So if this is creating a sound problem, Brandon, just chime in and tell me to sit down.
And you know what? You wandering around, you pacing fast circles in your house, you know what that can cause?
What?
Butterfly effect.
Yeah, I know. I'll tell you what, this is my most activity I've gotten today. I'm getting a little sweat.
Oh, you should bag skate. All right. From
Yeah.
family dining, getting Patterin back, but where does he fit now?
You know, I hate to say it. Somebody asked me on Twitter today, who's the odd man out? And I think I wrote back, and I kind of felt bad after because I really like Greg Patterin, you know, so hopefully he doesn't see it. But I wrote back, Patterin's the odd man out. I mean, you know, and meaning that he's probably going to have to wait his turn for an injury. Like, you know, right now, the top six is the top six. You know, I suppose eventually that you could put Dumba on the left or something and put Susie back to the left with Patterin and put Dumba back with Brodin and take Hunt out of the lineup. But I don't think they want to do that. I mean, Hunt's got, 5 or 6 goals already and, moves the puck really well. And I just don't think that he deserves to come out. And, you know, we're halfway through the year and it's just so hard. It's like somebody asked me the other day, or somebody asked me yesterday on Twitter. I don't know if I responded to it. Do you think they'd ever sit Dumba in favor of Sealer for a little bit? And the reason why I mostly would say no is it's just like Sealer's been scratched so much now that it is so hard to play him. Like I feel so bad for the kid. Like you almost just wish that Billy Guerin, or maybe it's happened, but that they would go to him and do what Nate Prosser did a couple times in his Wild tenure, where he was scratched so long that you go up to him and say, "Hey, do you want to go to Iowa? Will you go on a conditioning stint and go to Iowa and play 2 or 3 games here just to play?" And I bet you Sealer would say yes, because he also knows that he's in a tough spot. It's like next time he gets in, he knows. I mean, imagine playing knowing that you haven't played all season long, and now when you get in, if you make one mistake, you're out of the lineup again. It's a tough position for these guys to be in, which is why I used to always try to convey to the Pross haters out there why he was such a special player, that he could sit in the press box for a month and come in and be the same player he was. And that is not an easy thing to do. And so with Patterin, now you're coming back off a significant abdominal injury. You're not the fastest player to begin with. I just think it's really tough to put him in. Now, Dumba's not playing great. He is in dire need of just a goal. You know, I said to somebody on Twitter today, or maybe in a comment section on my Athletic app, that Dumba's the type of guy that right now needs just a goal to fly in off somebody's butt. Like, you know, we saw with Fiala. Fiala had that fluky half-wall goal that was like Tugo Teravainen scored against the Wild in the playoffs, 5 or 6 years ago. He had this fluky goal against St. Louis from the same spot. It was his first goal of the season after really tough first month where he was scratched a couple times and was snake bit. And he gets that goal and all that weight came off his shoulder and he's been absolutely awesome since. And I really just think that we've seen it so much lately where Dumba's just spanning on shots and blowing open nets. And last night has the 2-on-1 that could have made it 2-0 and couldn't convert. And, he's at that point where he's snake bit, but I just can't see that Greg Patterin coming back is going to get Bruce Boudreau to that point. But like, you know what, I'm going to send Matt Dumba a message now by playing Greg Patterin, who's completely rusty and coming off an injury and hasn't played half the year. I just think that's a hard thing to put him in. So I really think that Greg's going to have to probably be patient and wait for an injury, but we'll see.
Let's see. From Russo's Filter, our friend, based on production, resume, and cost, Stahl has to rank as the best free agent signing in team history now, maybe with Backstrom. What do you think?
Yeah, Brian Ralston probably there as well.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, Stahl, his first contract at 3 years at $3.5 million, then re-signed at 2 years at 3.25 maybe. I think he got a haircut a little bit on the new contract that Paul Fenton gave him. And so, at the time of the contract, I think a lot of us questioned it. And look, Eric Stahl is what he is. I think a lot of us questioned it because the philosophy at the time felt like they wanted to get younger and go after a center and things like that. But the reality is, and maybe the first month of the season we really questioned because he got off to a tough start. But the reality is that Eric Stahl is an absolute professional. And, having him still on this team, and the way he's played the last month and the fact that there's no other centers that can play that role in the entire organization. The reality is that you do have to say, where would this team be if he wasn't the guy that was scoring all these points here lately? He's had really good chemistry with Zuccarello here for upwards of 5 or 6 weeks. And they get along really well. One of the touching videos that I saw during this whole last 6-week stretch was after the game, after his goal in Chicago that he got his 1,000th point. They had a video GIF of the bench and Zuccarello just jumping on Eric Stahl and patting him on the helmet, giving him encouragement in a congratulatory way. And so I just think that he's a beloved guy in that room. There's nobody in the world that doesn't respect this guy. And the reader is right. I mean, it was a great contract at the time, especially considering as much as I like him and respect him, the contract that David Backes got in Boston. Remember, it was going to be between the two of them, and they wound up signing Stahl, and Stahl had a resurrection his first year here, and then gets 42 his second year, and maybe a down year last year, but he's definitely played well here the last 6 weeks.
Let's wrap up the show with a question from Jared Mealy, longtime listener. By the way, if you listened this far, it probably didn't bother you. We had a equipment breakdown following the cancellation of the show Tin Shed, so we're just kind of trying to patch this show together and get something out. We'll be back to our usual routine in the next show. If this show isn't up to our usual production standards, thank you for bearing with it. We'll get back to them shortly. I'm just kind of finagling this one on our phone because we had an equipment mishap. So from Jared, when is it going to be Jared Spurgeon's turn to represent the Wild at the All-Star game? No offense to Stahl, but I'd rather see a new face. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I would too. I will say I'm not cover. We have national people covering the All-Star game this year. I'm not. At first I was bummed when I thought it could be a Parise or a Spurgeon because, to me, those are the exciting stories when it's somebody that's new. And if Spurgeon was there, it'd be the greatest story in the world to cover. Because, again, it's, you hate to say it like this, but it's new blood, right? And same thing with Parise. It would be just fun to kind of witness that. But Eric Stahl, I was in Tampa 2 years ago. I got to do the cool behind-the-scenes looks at him hanging out the pool with his wife and his kids. And it's sort of like been there, done that. And this is his 6th one. And, good for him. He deserves it. But the league has players that they feel are marketable. And, otherwise, maybe a Fiala or a Spurgeon would have had a choice. But we even see it today where it's, I think a lot of Wild fans would say that Soucy, Brodin, and Spurgeon have been the 3 best Wild defensemen this year. And the last man standing ballot that's out there, Ryan Suter's on it because he is the name. That's the way the league just kind of operates. And, sometimes it's not fair. I get that. It would have been cool for Spurge there. But this is kind of the way that it broke down. And look, you can't argue. I mean, Eric Stahl is their leading goal scorer, their leading scorer. Just got 1,000 points, something only 6 NHLers have done right now. I mean, and those NHLers, that's Joe Thornton, that's Patrick Marleau, that's Evgeny Malkin, that's Alex Ovechkin, and that's Sidney Crosby. So those 5 and Eric Stahl. Those are 4 or 5 Hall of Famers in Eric Stahl. You can't argue with why they would want him there in St. Louis.
Good stuff, Michael. I'll let you get back to pacing and drinking microwave coffee. Thanks to everyone who's listened over the years. Anybody who's new to the show, thank you to our sponsors and to our producer, Brandon Morton. We will tentatively plan to see you January 7th, 7 o'clock at Tin Shed in Minnesota. I'll be just getting back from the Vikings-Saints playoff game. We'll talk about holidays, hockey, football, whatever you want. Show up, ask live questions, have a good time. TinShedMN.com is the website for Tin Shed and Savage, and we will see you there soon.
Pretty little city built on a hillside. Music in the bars and fire in the sky. We went to the beach and it was covered in ice. And I used to call it home. So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. the world